Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper analysis from the perspective of UPSC examination. Today we have taken up new daily edition of The Hindu newspaper dated 26th April 2023. Topics for today's discussion are displayed on your screen. Let's begin the discussion. Inspiration for our first discussion of today's session is based on this news which featured on page number 1 of The Hindu newspaper. Now, the Supreme Court on Tuesday has said that the sexual harassment allegations raised by 7 women wrestlers against Wrestling Federation of India President and BJP MP Brajbhushan Sharan Singh were serious. The recent case of allegations have brought attention towards the safety, security and rights of the women at workplace. Now, women related issues is an important theme under GS paper 1 as well as GS paper 2. As GS paper 1 mentions role of women and women organization, whereas GS paper 2 mentions mechanism, laws, institutions and bodies constituted for the protection and betterment of vulnerable section of the society. Now, if you will look into previous year's mains paper, every year UPSC has been asking questions based on different themes related to women. As in 2019, it has asked what are the continued challenges for women in India. While in 2014, it has asked a question based on patriarchy. In 2015, again UPSC asked a question about impact of globalization on women in India. Apart from this, UPSC has been asking questions based on important legislation with respect to vulnerable sections. Like in 2017, it has asked a question based on Right of Person with Disabilities Act 2016. So in this context, let's discuss important aspect related to sexual harassment of women at workplace. We will discuss impact of such harassment at workplace. We will also look into the features of prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplace, that is POSH Act of 2013. Further, we will look at the issues with the implementation of POSH Act, and to end the discussion, we will look into the way forward. So let's begin the discussion. So now, as you know, sexual harassment at workplace is a form of harassment that involves unwelcome sexual advances, request for sexual favors, or other verbal or physical conduct of sexual nature in the context of employment. It can occur between any individuals in the workplace, including between co-workers, between a supervisor and subordinate, or between clients and service providers. Now, Me Too movement of 2016 was an example of how deep this problem is. It was a civil society movement in the year 2017 where women survivors of sexual harassment started on social media about their experiences of gender-based violence. Many women in India from the media and entertainment industry as well as others who can access to social media in English also use the social media to publicize their accounts. So let us discuss now impact of sexual harassment at workplace. Now, female don't feel safe at workplaces, as sexual harassment can lead to a range of negative effects on the victims, including anxiety, depression, stress, and loss of self-esteem, and in some cases even physical health problems. Victims may experience difficulty in concentrating, sleeping, and performing their job duties, which can eventually lead to the leaving their job opportunities. Another impact is drop in female labor force participation, as fear of sexual harassment and ill treatment at workplace is a major contributor in low LFPR, that is labor force participation rate of women when compared to men. Now, as per periodic labor force survey which was done in pre-pandemic era of 2018 and 19, LFPR for women was just 18.6% as compared to 55.6% of the male. Now, according to a recent survey, 87% women would be likely to leave their job if a gender-based scandal like sexual harassment, bias in hiring occurred at the company they work. Now, you can see that complaint is not the preferred option, as 87% of them are ready to leave their job and not ready to complain. because of lack of trust in the system or the mechanism developed. Another issue is trivialization and normalization of sexual harassment. And this is especially visible in case of poor women, because poor women tactically accept sexual harassment just to protect their job. Now, as we discussed earlier, most women find it difficult to report sexual harassment. Now, according to India Spend report, 70% of women don't report workplace sexual harassment because of stigma, fear of retribution, and lack of trust in judicial processes. So let us look into important legislation in this regard, and that is Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act of 2013, which is also called as POSH Act of 2013. Now, a PIL was filed by Vishakha and other women group against the state of Rajasthan and Union of India before the Supreme Court. It proposed that sexual harassment be recognized as a violation of women's fundamental right to equality, and that all workplaces, establishment, institution be made accountable and responsible to uphold these rights. In a landmark judgment of Vishakha versus State of Rajasthan 1997, the Supreme Court of India created legally binding guidelines basing it on the right to equality and dignity accorded under Indian Constitution as well as by the Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, that is CEDAW. Now, this act was enacted to ensure safe working spaces for women and to build enabling work environment that respect women's right to equality of status and opportunity. This act defines what constitutes sexual harassment. Under its section 2, subclause N, it says any physical contact and advances or a demand or request for sexual favors, making sexual colored remarks or showing pornography or any unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature will be considered as sexual harassment. Act also defines who should be called as aggrieved women, and according to Act, any woman who is working, visiting a workplace or a student will be considered as aggrieved women. And working women will include domestic, regular, temporary, ad hoc or daily wager, working for remuneration, voluntary basis or otherwise, employed directly or through an agent, contract worker, probationer, trainee, apprentice, called by any other such name. So basically, it covers both the organized as well as unorganized sector. It also defines what is a workplace, and it says any place visited by the employee arising out of or during the course of employment, including transportation provided by the employer for undertaking such a journey, will be termed as a workplace. This act casts responsibility on employer to protect women employees for sexual harassment at the workplace. And it says any employer having 10 workers or more is required to set up an internal complaint committee or ICC. Complaints committee have powers of civil courts for gathering evidence. District officer is required to constitute a local complaint committee at each district and if required at the block level. Act also says that non-compliance with provision of Act shall be punishable with a fine up to ₹50,000 rupees. So what are the issues with the implementation of POSH Act? So the first issue lies in the legal shortcoming in the Act. Now, power of civil court have been given to internal complaint committee without specifying if members need to have a legal background or not. Another issue is the modest fine of ₹50,000 for non-compliance with the Act, which is not enough to act as a deterrent. Another issue is conflict of interest, as employer nominates members of ICC. Now, provision of prior internal inquiry is misused and it promotes a culture of suppression of legitimate complaints to avoid the concerned establishment falling into a disrepute. Now, provision of conciliation in the Act treats a criminal act, that is sexual harassment, as a civil dispute. Now, according to law, it provides for punishing the women if she is found to have filed a false and malicious complaint, which is completely abusive provision and is intended to nullify the objective of law. Now, another issue is lack of data. Government maintains no centralized data relating to cases of harassment of women at workplaces. It do not publicly comply and release data on how many companies and districts comply with guidelines and have committees, number of complaint, etc. Now, 95% of India's women workers are employed in informal sector, but local committees to be formed under POSH Act have either been not formed in most districts or is not well publicized, leaving women in informal sector with no avenue to report. There is no separate provision of budget for the implementation of this act. Women are discouraged to report sexual harassment incidents because of fear of being forced to withdraw from work by the family member. So there remains some social challenges also. Apart from this, there is a digital divide. Women can also file complaints through Women and Child Development Ministries SheBox, an online complaint platform for all women workers. But most India's women workers find it difficult to access these redressal methods, especially SheBox, given the low number of women who use the internet in India. So let us have a look at the way forward. Now, firstly, focus should be on effective implementation of the Act to ensure a safe working environment for females. Empowerment of National Commission of Women should be done with power to summon people and carry out independent investigations, impose fines, search and seizure in matter of sexual harassment at workplace. Awareness about the act should be increased among females. Provisions and features of act should be added to school and college curriculums. Discussion should be organized around these issues in civil society. Special attention should be given towards sectors where women are most vulnerable to sexual harassment, garment sector and domestic workers. Another suggestion is law needs to be made gender neutral, as sexual harassment challenges can be faced even by a transgender and males also. Nationwide audit of functioning of internal complaint committee, that is ICC, and local complaint committee, that is LCC, should be taken up. Government should publicize the recommendation of group of ministers report on sexual harassment. Now, there are some changes proposed in law by this group of ministers report, which says there should be a removal of penalty for false complaint, which is acting as a deterrent for the women complainants. It also says removal of a need for conciliation between complainant and respondent. It also suggested formation of local complaints committee should be at block or tehsil level and not at district level. Justice Verma committee noted that internal complaint committee system should be replaced by employment tribunal, as dealing with such complaint in-house could discourage women from coming out. Inspiration for this discussion comes from this news article which featured on page number 11 of the Hindu newspaper. Now, recently the Ashok Gehlot-led Rajasthan government announced the Rajasthan Platform-Based Gig Workers Registration and Welfare Bill 2023, which has stringent provisions against errant aggregators as well as various welfare policies. Now, this article is from the archive section of the Hindu newspaper, which was published in 2020. And this article talks about Union Government's Code on Social Security, which was released in 2020. And it highlights the major issue, that is that this code doles out benefits but not the rights. Now, issue of job and employment are important from the perspective of UPSC examination, as if you will trace your GS syllabus of paper 3, Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and issues related to employment has been clearly mentioned. Now, tracing further, if you will look into the previous year mains paper, you will find that topic of employment or theme of employment has been a recurring theme in UPSC mains examination. As in 2014, it has asked a question about the dropping rates of employability. And it is asked you to discuss where will the jobs that India desperately needs come from. Similarly, in 2017, UPSC again asked a question that the growth of cities as IT hubs has opened up new avenues of employment, but has also created new problems. You had to substantiate this statement with examples. In 2019, it has asked a question that how manufacturing hub will help in promoting employment in India. Similarly, in 2016, UPSC has asked that how globalization has led to the reduction of employment in the formal sector of Indian economy. Now, previously on 24th April 2023, important facts related to Rajasthan platform-based gig workers bill and Niti Aayog's report on the gig economy has been discussed. You can refer this DNS for the understanding on these two topics. However, in this discussion, we will be covering up some other aspect of gig economy, which will include what is gig economy, what is reason for their growth, what are the prospects in India, what is the advantage and disadvantages of gig economy from the perspective of both employer as well as worker. Further, we will look into what is Code on Social Security and what are the features which are being criticized and analyzed. Further, we will discuss challenges associated with gig economy with respect to India. And lastly, we will look into the way forward for the further growth and prospects of gig economy in India. So let's begin our discussion. So the first question arises is what is gig economy? A gig economy is a labor market that relies heavily on temporary and part-time positions. And these positions are filled by independent contractors and freelancers rather than full-time permanent employees. The best example with which you can understand the gig economy is the labor market which is in front of you in shape of various online platforms like Zomato, Uber, etc., where temporary and part-time people are being enrolled or involved in providing service to the consumers. Through this, gig workers gain flexibility and independence, but little or no job security. Many employers save money by avoiding paying benefits such as health coverage and paid vacation time. Others pay for some benefits to gig workers but outsource the benefits programs and other management tasks to external agencies. So where does India stands and what are the prospect of gig economy in India? We will refer two major findings, first through Niti Aayog's estimation. Second is a report by Taskmo, which is a gig discovery platform. So according to Niti Aayog's estimation, in the year 2020 and 2021, there were around 7.1 million, that is 77 lakh workers who were engaged in the gig economy in India. And according to the same estimation, this number is going to swell to the tune of 23.5 million, that is around 2.35 crore by 2029 and 30. That means around 200% of jump in the number of people engaged in the gig economy. This estimation also highlights that the creation of job and prospect of job is going to be distributed in almost all sector, including requirement of low, medium and high skill set. Niti Aayog says that number of people being engaged in the category of requirement of medium skill is going to drop, while we will witness high number of employment in low skill job sets and high skill job sets. Apart from this, Taskmo in its studies has found that there is around 7 times surge in demand for white collar gig workers for the roles of administrative assistant, industry experts for e-commerce, technical skills worker, analytics and data scientists. Report further says overall the demand for gig worker has increased by 10-fold, whereas the participation of gig worker has increased by 3 times in the year 2022 itself when compared to the year 2021. Another important finding is related to women's participation, which according to Taskmo has increased around 18 to 36% in 1 year, showing a remarkable growth of around 2 times when compared to the last year, that is 2021. Whereas youth participation in gig economy has seen an 8-fold rise between 2019 and 2022. So as it was correctly highlighted by the Niti Aayog that creation of job will touch every sector, TASMO report highlights that not only it will touch every sector but also every section of the society. So the first question that one should ask oneself is, what is the reason behind such an exponential growth? Now the first reason for such a growth trajectory is rapid growth of digital communication, wherein the workforce is highly mobile and work can be done from practically anywhere without any geographical barrier. Now, the second reason is the adoption of gig economy reduces the operating cost. Since the companies would not be liable to pay pension and other social security benefits. Apart from this, companies do not require to maintain a huge permanent facility to accommodate their employees. So it definitely reduces the operating cost of the company, and thus company are preferring gig economy. Another factor which contributes to the growth of gig economy is the flexibility that it provides, and especially the flexibility to the workers, wherein they can switch jobs frequently and choose work which suits their area of interest. Now for this very reason, majority of youngsters are opting for gig economy and the job prospects associated with it. Now lastly, recent slowdown in the formal employment creation has also boosted the development of gig economy. As most of the people in the job market are looking at gig economy and its opportunities as a prospect to fill in the transition period. Now let us look into the various advantages and disadvantages of gig economy. So the first advantage is cost effectiveness. Now minimizing cost and expenses are widely considered one of the major benefits of operating in the gig economy. Further, in gig economy, businesses are able to hire off-site workers, which significantly reduces the need to maintain expensive workspaces and large offices. In addition, hiring independent contractors completely eliminates large expenses such as employee benefit packages, retirement plans, and paid sick leaves. Second advantage to employer is the availability of labor force, which matches the requirement of both the customer and the employer. How? Because gig economy provides a labor force that is able to directly match the company to the freelancer. This removes the hassle of dealing with middlemen throughout the hiring process, thus making it easier to find people to complete the job. Now, one of the major advantage is related to the output production, because modern day workers in today's society are beginning to value flexibility much more than compared to in the past. This is why the gig economy prospers. Individuals who are interested in accumulating extra income are attracted to applying for position that offers a unique work schedule. Such flexibility directly impacts employee motivation, which in turn creates a positive correlation to output production. Now, in a similar fashion, gig economy offers several advantages to workers also. First is the independence. So the independent contractors and freelancers in the gig economy are not required to work in offices. Rather, they work in their own spaces. It varies from someone working in a home office writing articles to someone working from their car driving Uber. Second is extension of this independence only, that is flexibility. Workers operating in the gig economy are allowed to work any of the hours they desire. In most cases, a task will be given to a worker with an end date, but when they work on it is completely up to their discretion. And workers these days prefer such flexibilities. Another advantage is extra income. As we have already discussed that gig economy is an increasingly attractive market due to the sheer flexibility and independence that allows individual to earn extra income also. While there is a wide variety of advantages that the gig economy produces, there are also some downsides that tend to make the process difficult. So let's discuss the disadvantages one by one. Now, on employer side, first disadvantage is workers' commitment. Now, individuals who work as freelancer may not be as invested in their organization as if they were hired full time. In addition, gig economy companies are generally not known to incentivize their employees. Such an arrangement can create loyalty issues, reduces the likelihood of further work, and decreases the motivation to work overall. Now, second disadvantage is associated with ethical issues. In some cases, organizations that operate in gig economy are criticized for the unethical practices they perform. Their employment is casual, it does not offer benefits, and generally does not offer competitive wages. Now, since you know organizations operating in gig economy do not provide benefits to their workers, independent contractors are not completely considered employees of this business, so they lack benefits. Further, in some cases, organizations within the gig economy are not required to cover personal expenses such as the CNG and fuel being used while driving Uber or Ola. And lastly, being an independent contractor is an extremely independent job. For some people, the arrangement is a major motivation, but for others, it can create a feeling of isolation, which can negatively affect the quality of work as well as mental health. Now, before moving on to understand what are the concerns and challenges related to gig economy in India, we must understand the term that is social security. Now, the social security is the protection that a society provides to individuals and households to ensure access to healthcare and to guarantee income security, particularly in cases of old age, unemployment, sickness, invalidity, work injury, maternity, or loss of breadwinner. Now, Social Security in India includes a variety of statutory insurances and social grant schemes run by the Indian government at both federal as well as at state level. And they are majorly divided into three categories, namely non-contributory, which are often funded by the taxpayers. For example, medical coverage of the employees. Secondly, employer funded, for example, paid leave. And lastly, joint funded, that is contributed by both employer and the employee and partially contributed by the government. For example, the National Pension Scheme. So while India has a robust social security net for its organized sector, its unorganized sector is largely neglected. And in order to improve on it, government brought the Code on Social Security 2020. The code is aimed to replace 9 legislations which provide social security to the employees like Maternity Benefit Act, Employee Provident Fund Act, Employees Pension Scheme, and Employees Compensation Act, among others. The code aims to provide uniformity in providing social security benefits to the employees, which was earlier segregated under different acts and had different applicability and coverage. The code also aims to provide social security to wider group of employees, as the code has recognized and covered workers working in unorganized sector. Apart from this, code also provide definition for gig workers and platform workers. In general, the term gig worker means someone who takes on hourly or part-time jobs in everything from catering event to software development. The work is usually temporary and completed during a specified time under a non-standard work arrangement. The code defines the term gig worker as a person who performs work or participates in a work arrangement and earns from such activities outside of traditional employee-employer relationship. Apart from this, it has described the platform worker as a person engaged in or undertaking platform work. For example, a person working for Uber, Ola, Zomato, etc. But to understand what is a platform, you need to read this definition. This code defines a platform as a work arrangement outside of a traditional employer-employee relationship in which Organizations or individuals use an online platform to access other organization or individuals to solve specific problems or to provide specific services or any such other activities which may be notified by the central government in exchange for payment. Apart from this, the code also provides for setting up of a social security fund. Now, concerns and challenges associated with gig economy and gig workers are mostly related to the disadvantage related to the gig economy. So, in light of this, let us look at the concerns related to gig economy. First is lack of labor right. Now, platform workers often have limited control over their work. For instance, in some cases, they cannot set prices, they are required to wear uniform, they cannot choose the order of their task. This in turn makes them prone to the exploitation of the platform-based companies. Second concern is lack of legal right. Now, when we talk about industrial workers, they are given legal rights over the various aspects of work, such as payment of minimum wages, right to strike, right to form trade union, etc. However, any of such rights have not been recognized in case of gig workers. Another concern is greater control of the employer. It is being said that gig platform workers enjoy higher level of freedom and flexibility in their work. However, these advantages get overshadowed by their higher dependence on the platform. For example, if a person wants to work as a cab driver or a food delivery agent, he needs his own vehicle. Since poor people do not have access to loans, they come to be dependent on the platform for the loans provided by them. This in turn reduces the said flexibility. The workers would have to work according to the needs and requirement of the platform company. Another issue is no guaranteed benefit. Industrial workers are automatically guaranteed social security benefits such as provident funds, insurance, maternity benefits, etc. However, such benefits are not automatically extended to gig workers. The central and state governments are required to come up with the schemes to provide these benefits. So, the social security benefit for the gig workers is dependent upon the political will of the government. Now, Code on Social Security mandates industries employing workers above a certain threshold level to compulsorily contribute towards social security benefits, such as provident fund and insurance. However, as far as gig workers is concerned, the language in the code does not provide for compulsory contribution by the aggregator platforms. Hence, it is left open to the government whether to seek contribution from the aggregator platform or not. So much has been left to the discretion of the employer and the political will of the government. So what is the way forward? Now the way forward lies in the Niti Aayog's recommendations, which has already been covered in the DNS session of 24th April 2023. So let us quickly revise them. The first suggestion is catalyzing platformization. It suggests that in line with the Startup India initiative, a Platform India initiative built on the pillars of accelerating platformization by simplification and hand-holding, funding support and incentives along with skill development should be introduced. Now another suggestion is related to acceleration of finance for platform workers. Aayog suggests that access to institutional credit may be enhanced through financial products which are specifically designed for platform workers and those interested to set up their own platforms. Another suggestion is related to skill development. Aayog suggests that platform-led models of skilling and job creation need to be promoted for the gig and platform sector. Platforms can collaborate with Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship and National Skill Development Corporation to nurture skilled workers and micro entrepreneurship. Another suggestion is related to the social inclusion. It says gender sensitization and accessibility awareness programs for workers and their families should be taken up. Further, it says that social security for gig and platform workers should be extended through measures like paid sick leave, health access and insurance, occupational disease and work accident insurance, retirement plans, etc. Ayog also suggests to undertake a separate enumeration exercise to estimate the size of the gig economy and identify the characteristics feature of the gig worker. And lastly, Ayog says that being in its nascent stage, the platform economy in India is yet to be studied comprehensively. So there is need of a comprehensive study to identify the key pillars of the gig economy sector in India. The next article of today's discussion is based on this news, which featured on page number 13 of the Hindu newspaper. Now, the Congress party has accused the government of lack of transparency and accountability in the PM Cares Fund and demanded that a public fund that receives donation to the tune of rupees 5,000 crore rupees should come under the ambit of RTI and show accountability. Now, if you will look into the GS paper 2 syllabus, important aspects of governance includes transparency and accountability. And recently in 2020, UPSC has asked a question based on recent amendments to the Right to Information Act, that is RTI, and its significance. So here in this discussion, we will be looking at what is PM Care Fund, what are its objectives, what are the government's argument in keeping PM Care Fund out of the ambit of RTI. We will look at the basics of RTI Act and challenges therein. And we will end this discussion by discussing some way forward or suggestion for the same. So let's begin the discussion. So first thing is, what is PM Care Fund? These pointers are mainly important from the perspective of preliminary examination. Now, PM Cares Fund has been registered as a public charitable trust under the Registration Act of 1908. Its primary objective is to deal with any kind of emergency and distress-like situation like posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and to provide relief to the affected. The Prime Minister of India is the ex officio chairman of the PM Cares Fund and the Ministers of Defence, Home Affairs and Finance are its trustees. The PM Cares Fund relies entirely on voluntary contributions from individuals and organizations and does not receive any financial support from the government's budget. Contribution made to the PM Care Fund are eligible for 100% income tax exemption under the Income Tax Act of 1961, encouraging people to donate for good cause. Further, donations made to the PM Care Funds can be counted as part of companies' corporate social responsibility, that is CSR expenditure under the Companies Act of 2013. The PM Cares Fund has received exemption under the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, that is FCRA, allowing it to receive donations and contributions from foreign individuals as well as organizations. This exemption is consistent with the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund, that is PMNRF, which has been accepting foreign contribution as a public trust since 2011. So the primary goal of the PM Care Fund is to support relief and rehabilitation efforts in time of crisis, with focus on providing essential resources and services to people in distress. The PM Care Fund is authorized to provide relief and support in the event of public health emergency or any other kind of emergency, whether caused by humans or nature. So it covers both anthropogenic as well as natural calamities. The fund can support various initiatives such as upgrading healthcare or pharmaceutical facilities, providing necessary infrastructure, funding relevant research or any other form of assistance which is important to contain any kind of disaster or distress situation. Now, since the news is about why government is not putting PM Cares Fund under the ambit of RTI, we must look at the government's argument for the same. The center has informed that PM Cares Fund is set up as a public charitable trust and is not created under the constitution or any law made by the parliament or state. Hence, it does not constitute a public authority, which come under the provisions of the RTI Act. Another argument is that the trust is not a public authority under RTI and it accepts voluntary donations by individual and institutions. And any contribution flowing out of the budgetary sources of government are not accepted. Government has also clarified that PM Care Fund Trust is independent of any government or its agencies. Although some holders of public office serve on the board of trustee, but it is for the administrative convenience and does not confer ownership or control over the trust. Furthermore, the purpose of PM Care Fund is entirely charitable and its funds are not used for any government projects. Therefore, the trust cannot be classified as public authority and is not governed by any government policies and thus should not come under the ambit of RTI. So let us look into some basic details related to right to information. Now, Right to Information Act of 2005 is a landmark law in India. It is aimed at combating corruption and ensuring accountability in the governance. It grants citizens the power to access government documents and files and hold public officials accountable for their actions. The RTI Act is a crucial tool for promoting transparency and accountability in a democratic society, where the government is accountable to its citizen. In fact, the Supreme Court of India has held in case of Raj Narayan versus Uttar Pradesh that right to information is a fundamental right guaranteed under Article 19, Subclause 1, Subclause A of the Indian Constitution. This reflects the importance of the right to information in a democratic society. However, there are certain organizations that are exempted from the purview of the RTI Act. These include intelligence agencies, the Central Economic Intelligence Bureau, research bodies working with the country's security agencies, and paramilitary forces. Now let us look into the challenges of right to information. First is low public awareness. Section 26 of the Act states that the appropriate government may develop and organize educational programs to advance the understanding of the public, especially disadvantaged communities, regarding how to exercise the rights contemplated under the Act. However, information seeker survey revealed only 15% of the respondents were aware of the RTI Act. Another issue is poor record management practice. Under Section 4, Subclause 2, organizations have to maintain computerized records, but organizations are not doing it. Another challenge lies in the constraints faced in the filing application. Now, non-availability of user guides for RTI implementation for information seekers, which was mandated under Section 26 of the RTI Act, is a major issue. Now, you have already seen that there are certain organizations which are exempted from the purview of RTI. Section 8 Subclause 1 provides for exemption to disclosure of info from intelligence organization, judiciary, cabinet papers, and matters concerning foreign relations. Now, during the information seeker survey, it was also highlighted that more than 75% of the citizens are dissatisfied with the quality of information being provided. The percentage of people who said that incomplete information was provided to them was alarmingly high in Andhra Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh. So, the poor quality of information is another challenge. Further, lack of information on certain accounts is another challenge. During COVID pandemic, when the government was asked about specific data on how many people lost their lives due to lack of oxygen, number of migrant workers who lost their jobs, government replied that it does not have any such information. Now, next challenge lies in the failure to the compliance of providing information within 30 days. During information seeker survey, more than 50% of information seekers mentioned that it took more than 30 days to receive the information from the PIO. Like any other government department, there is a huge backlog of vacancy in the Information Commission also. 24% of the Information Commissioner's post lying vacant in 28 states. One of the major challenges is the threat to the life of RTI activists. According to Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, 84 RTI activists have been murdered since 2005 for seeking information on illegal construction, alleged scams in social welfare schemes, and corruption in panchayats. So the way forward lies in the problems itself. First is pendency should be reduced. Government should streamline procedures so that to expedite the information furnishing procedure. Further, it should also equip itself with relevant and sufficient data and information so as to provide timely and accurate information. Another suggestion is the filling up of vacancies as early as possible. Protection to whistleblower is another important suggestion. Police protection must be provided to those who have sought information related to any scam or irregularity in which there is a threat of their life. Last but not the least, political parties should come under the ambit of RTI so as to instill the confidence in the democratic process and the governing bodies. The last topic of today's discussion is based on this news which featured on page number 10 of the Hindu newspaper. Now, the Department of Biotechnology has said that exercise to sequence around 10,000 Indian human genomes and create a database under the center-backed Genome India project is about two-thirds complete. About 7,000 Indian genomes have already been sequenced, of which 3,000 are available for public access to researchers. So this discussion will be mainly focused from the perspective of prelims examination, in which all the details related to genome sequencing and Genome India projects will be covered. So let's begin the discussion. So first thing is, what is genome sequencing? Now, human genome is the entire set of deoxyribonucleic acid, which is commonly known as DNA, residing in the nucleus of every cell of the human body. It carries the complete genetic information responsible for the development and functioning of an organism. The DNA consists of a double-stranded molecule built up by 4 bases, namely adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. While the sequence of base pair is identical in all humans, there are differences in the genome of every human being that make them unique. Genome sequencing is the process of determining the complete DNA sequence of an organism's genome. It involves identifying the order of base pair that make up the DNA molecule in each of the chromosomes of an organism's DNA to decode the genetic fingerprint of human. Now let us understand what is Human Genome Project. In 1990, a group of scientists began working on the Human Genome Project, which was an international program that led to the decoding of the entire human genome. Completed in the year 2003, the Human Genome Project gave the ability for the first time to read nature's complete genetic blueprint for building a human being. So why these studies are being done? What are the applications of genome sequencing? First is disease diagnosis and treatment. Genome sequencing can identify genetic mutations and variations that contribute to the development of diseases. It has been used to evaluate rare disorders, preconditions for disorders, and even cancer from the viewpoint of genetics. Another application is drug development. Genome sequencing can identify genetic target for drug development and testing, leading to the development of more effective and personalized drugs. In the field of agriculture, genome sequencing can help identify genes that contribute to desirable traits in plants and animals, allowing for the selective breeding of crops and livestock. Genome sequencing can help trace the evolutionary history of species and understand the mechanism underlying this evolution. In forensic, genome sequencing can be used to identify suspects in criminal investigations and to establish paternity in the cases of disputed parentage. So in the similar line, Genome India project is a government initiative launched by Indian Council of Medical Research, that is ICMR, in the year 2019 to execute whole genome sequencing and subsequent data analysis of 10,000 individuals representing the country's diverse population by the end of the year 2023. The goal of the project is to create a comprehensive reference database of genetic variation in the Indian population and identify genetic variations that are associated with common and rare diseases prevalent in the Indian population. The project is being carried out in collaboration with several institutions including the National Center for Biological Sciences, the Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology, and the Center of Cellular and Molecular Biology. Why there is need for Genome India project? India has around 1.3 billion population consisting of over 4,600 population groups, many of which are endogamous. That is, disease-causing mutations often amplified within some of these groups. But despite being a large population with diverse ethnic groups, India lacks a comprehensive catalogue of genetic variations. Creating a database of Indian genomes allows researchers to learn about genetic variants unique to India's population group and use that to customize drugs. That's all for today's session. Stay tuned for more such updates.